Awesome.
Hi.
Congratulations.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of It's About Time with Oraclistic Mystic, a.k.a. Abacus, and the Revelator, a.k.a. Mackey, two Appalachians who are into astrology, whether they like it or not. And we're here today doing our first recording, and zero has been scripted. How you doing, Mackey?
Good. How are you today?
I'm well. I don't even have my shoes tied. So I think this is where being unscripted could be really, really nice.
I don't have any ties in my shoe.
Maybe I should work in that direction. Even though in the winter, you have that going on in the wintertime?
I just have this going on because I'm just trying to be relaxed and comfortable, and I'm going to do a sauna later, so I'm just going...
I love that.
Just really easy.
Very good, very good.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want too, and that's why I didn't even think about it, and that's why I just asked you, do you want to just hit record and see what happens? Because I feel like the best experience we could possibly have with this project, which that should totally be considered, is our experience, rather than it being a good thing, so that we don't suffer from burnout or whatever, is that it is supportive to us as individuals, and I feel like we're living in really crazy times. So to commit to something in a passive way feels doable. Yeah,
and I think what you just said is maybe we need to talk about our relationship in terms of astrology, and then talk about our crazy times kind of second.
Totally.
And so what I did was first of all, I got this chart for you, and it's for today for our.
Yay.
And we did start a little late, so Venus actually ended up right on the.
Ooh.
Yeah, right on the
Horizon.
On the ascendant.
Okay.
But we still have Jupiter in the 7th house.
Beautiful. Which
is awesome. That's my ruling planet. And then we have that Mars Moon conjunction in the 8th house, which rules astrology. So I think we're on a great path forward. And then, of course, it's Scorpio season now, because Sun just went into Scorpio yesterday, and now it's fully in there. And we have Sun and Mercury both in Scorpio, and it's the beginning of Scorpio season. Venus has already moved on to Sagittarius. And you're being super Scorpio. Your birthday's coming up, so I did a solar return chart for you, and guess what?
Mackey.
That new moon is right back where it was when you were born this year. I'm sure you're aware of that coming up. And actually, your solar return is on November 1st because it's a leap year. So you can celebrate early.
That's amazing. Day of the Dead. I like it. This is so thoughtful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and of course, Pluto rules Scorpio and the dead also.
Wow.
So,
yes.
But, what I really wanted to start talking about first was, that Scorpio season is here. Sun went into Scorpio yesterday at 6:15 p.m. Also, I was going to talk about me and you. Here's our event chart in the middle. Your planet's on the second ring, and my planet's on the outer ring.
Okay.
And what I really noticed about us yesterday and today is because I have a Mars-Uranus conjunction in Leo.
So you made a
14,
composite
15.
chart for us.
Yeah, this is basically just so you can look at our chart compared to today,
Love it.
the event. And your Mars in Aquarius directly opposes my Mars in Leo, my Mars-Uranus conjunction. I got Venus up there too. And guess what it's squared to today, to the Mercury. So causing all sorts of interesting delays and
Mayhem in communications.
But it also charges up our communication. So because right now Mercury, I think when I'm looking at all this stuff, Mercury's playing a huge part in it. Mercury's in Scorpio, Sun's in Scorpio. Scorpio season's begun. You're Super Scorpio. So, it's a very good time for us to start this discussion.
Hell yeah.
And yeah, so that's kind of interesting. Mercury squares your natal Mars today, 8:33 p.m. Squared my natal Mars yesterday at 5 p.m. So we're sitting at a T-square basically right now between our Mars and Mercury. Also, your let's see. Then the Moon's going to conjunct Mars tonight too to add to the fire, even though it's in water. Oh, but the thing that I really notice about me and you is 16 out of our 20 major planets are in water and fire.
Oh, yeah.
16 out of 20.
Oh, yeah.
The only air we got is that Mars of yours.
Amazing.
And then the rest of it's in Capricorn.
Right.
Me and you got Capricorn going on too.
Well, and my Mars has progressed out of that into Pisces, so...
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, I'm looking at natal charts. I don't really look at progressions.
Totally.
And guess what? 7 of those 16 planets are in Scorpio. 11 of them, including both of our moons and suns, are in water.
Wow.
So we got 11 out of 20 in water, 7 out of 20 in Scorpio alone, and 16 out of 20 in water and fire. So really, we could call it Mystic and Revelator. We could call it water and fire. I mean, that's what our strong suits are.
Totally.
So that's kind of interesting. Also, between me and you are your Neptune and my Saturn are scary right on the same spot.
Wow.
Within 2 minutes of each other.
Wow.
Yeah. So
amazing.
That's kind of crazy too.
Yeah. Amazing.
And then right now you're transiting Mercury right now is conjunct your natal Venus to add another Mercury influence to today.
Wow.
And that at 1:20 a.m.
Amazing.
this morning.
Amazing.
So isn't that crazy? Yeah,
Absolutely.
You can see all that here. But
hell yeah. So
that's kind of when and I did your chart a long time ago, and I hope that this is correct because that's what I'm going off.
Yep. 100%.
Okay.
So
because I've had your information for a long time.
Amazing.
But I haven't really looked into it until we decided to do this.
Yeah, well,
and it was scary. You're the scariest Scorpio person I've ever met.
Well, I haven't had your information ever because we have never really had a sit-down conversation until now, actually.
You got it now.
Because I disliked your best friend, which is the scariest Scorpio traits, right?
You liked...
I disliked your friend at the time.
My best friend was who?
I can't say it out loud. This is going to be local at some point.
You're going to write it. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Sorry, listeners.
Oh, okay.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Oh. Well, of course, you're an
like,
enemy.
fuck
He
that
must
guy.
be in your 7th house or
Well,
something.
he's a Scorpio, too.
Oh, he's a Scorpio. Okay.
So I was like, fuck that guy. He's friends with that guy.
We've narrowed it down to someone who identifies as a guy.
Look out, town. Let the rumors start. Oh, man.
That narrows it down to half the population.
Yeah.
And narrows it down to 1/24th because he said he was a Scorpio.
Oh, shit.
So you're giving it up. You're giving it up.
Okay. So I think it's interesting, though, that we have all this really incredible infrastructure, this cosmic infrastructure with our composite chart, with our design.
I didn't even do the composite chart yet.
Yeah,
either,
well,
so.
you can see it kind of like coming together already. Fire and water are both really, really powerful elements, and the fact that those are our leading characteristics is like really, really intense to me. Like as someone who also practices in palmistry and tarot, in addition to astrology, I see fire as spirit and water is spirit both, and fire is like communication. So I think that we both have a lot to offer individually, but together I think it's going to be a really, really beautiful thing. And an idea that I had, which is awesome because you started doing it already just naturally, was that maybe we could do Whenever we check in on each episode, we could do little snapshots of the astro weather, and you could do a look at what's happening now, like what you came in and did, right? Because I feel like that's how your brain kind of operates. So you're looking at the micro weather pattern, and then I'll do a snapshot of the macro. And then we get into whatever else it is that we're getting into, which you already did your part. So, if I were to take a step in that direction, I would talk a little bit about the macro, which is, yes, we're entering Scorpio season, but on a bigger picture, we're getting ready to step into, and by the way, with these little weather snippets, you can speak on macro and I can speak on micro. It's just each of us will lead it. That's what I was thinking, because these are our brains, I think. But big picture, astro weather, we're on the edge of a very, very big change. Pluto is heading into Aquarius after being in Capricorn for forever now. And so there are a lot of contracts closing out. There are a lot of lessons being wrapped up. And I feel like it's going to shift. Well, I know that it's going to shift everything. And part of this entire podcast is because I felt this shift coming on and knew it was coming. How many times have I approached you, Mackey, about working together?
Several.
Right, and it's just been getting more and more intense. I'm like, hey.
Well, the whole inspiration for this discussion was the fact that Pluto is moving into Aquarius. Finally, and out of Capricorn for the rest of everyone's lives. It's not going back into Capricorn until 2250 or something. So that was kind of the inspiration for this podcast, but I really wanted to go micro first and talk about me and you and how our astrological relationship is before we get into the whole Pluto thing, because the Pluto thing affects everybody.
Okay.
It affects the world, but it affects everybody in a personal way too.
Truly.
It really just the sign is the same for everyone born for the next 18 years, so it's not anything like a sign difference between people. What it is mostly is a house difference if you're looking at a natal chart. Right. So, but we can talk a lot about what's going on with Pluto going into Aquarius.
Yeah, but we can do that more next episode. I was thinking maybe we could do two per astrological season. Is that something for you?
Yeah, whatever. I mean, what are we going to talk about for the rest of just today?
Well, I was thinking, here's my idea. I was thinking that we would talk a little bit about so I need to dial it back to a little bit more closer, what's been happening. So I'm going to chat a little bit about eclipses, and I'd love for you to give your take on that as well.
Okay.
Because we're just coming out officially of eclipse season. And wow. And then I was thinking maybe that we could just do a little interview of each other. Because I don't fucking know you, and you don't know me. And I would love to know what brought you to this world. What brought you to the world of astrology? The what, the why, the how. Like a little 15-minute interview of both of us after a little snippet of what's been happening in the cosmos as far as weather patterns concerning the eclipses.
Okay.
How does that sound?
Sounds good.
Okay.
I mean, we only have till November 19th, the end of Scorpio season, before Pluto finally moves out of Capricorn. So there's a lot of loose ends being tied up now.
I know.
So, let's go ahead and do your thing about the eclipses.
Okay, well, in addition to eclipses, there's a lot going on with Pluto anyway. It's been squaring shit. It's been causing a ruckus. And there's been a lot of stuff going on with Chiron and Lilith, Black Moon Lilith as well. So I feel like in addition to it being the last eclipse of the year, it's also just been fucking armed. I don't know if we're going to be cursing. Armed to the teeth with elements that are interested in excavating shadow, trauma, because that's what both Chiron and Black Moon Lilith do. And with the eclipses, we're closing out a cycle in Libra and Aries. We're moving into the Pisces-Virgo axis now. And I feel like I love that Venus is on the cusp right now, because it's really brought all of us into a greater perspective and balance. Because, the nodes stay, for 18 months, each round of eclipses. And so I feel like it's bringing all of us to a really important place of balance before this Plutonic shift. Because it's the balance of self and others, right? Not putting overemphasis on one or the other. And so I feel like this has been a really important transformational shift in preparation for Pluto. I know that I've certainly felt it, but then again, I have a South Node in Libra and North Node in Aries. So
and then your North Node in Aries is conjunct on your solar return chart with Chiron.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
That's why you're thinking about Chiron a lot. I don't really know much about Chiron.
It's the wounded healer.
Yeah. So probably should know more.
So yeah, this eclipse has been very, very intense for me. A lot of personal growth, leveling up, changes, loss, a bunch of stuff. But I'm a sensitive fucker anyway. So I lean into it. I lean into the transformations. I kind of started viewing life like Mario recently. Where you, especially in eclipse season, you can take that opportunity. You can put your head in the sand, which sometimes I do just want to do. Okay, especially when it's this personal and intense, like these have been for me. Or you can say, time is not linear. It's a spiral. And you're either moving up or down, depending on what jump you step on. And so instead of just getting lost in feeling the energy of it all, which I do intensely, I just make calculated risk choices and decisions and jump onto the spiral in order for that energy, especially ecliptic energy, to carry me up instead of down. So I just look at it like a grid, and then I look for the right mushroom, and boom, 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 boom. So I'm happy that eclipse season is over, and I'm also happy for all it has both brought and taken away. How was it for you?
Oh, let's see. When was the last eclipse? Was it 6 weeks ago?
And I've done a lot on eclipses. Like I launched Chimera, Temple of Co-Creation, which that's where we're at right now. And then, launched pages, launched opportunities for partnerships to come in, and they've all been like on the ecliptic realm. Sorry, I was just saying that because I realized I didn't say anything personal about what I did with them, but I always use them as, I don't even mean to most of the time, but it's kind of like goal markers and posts, and I move with it. But yeah, how was it for you, and how is it typically for you?
I don't really... Not that aware. I mean, I'm aware that there's eclipses, and really they've been Aries, Libra, but I'm really a lot more of a Pisces person, and this last full moon in Pisces really crushed me, exposed me. It altered my hopes, I guess. So it wasn't an eclipse, but it was kind of close to being an eclipse season. So yeah, it emotionally wrecked me basically, and maybe that's part of a transformation I'm going through. It's inspired me also. So there's two sides to that coin, of course. But yeah, it's there's a lot of world crap going on right now, obviously, and there's a lot of personal stuff going on for a lot of people, including myself. So yeah, this last 6 weeks for me has been 5-6 weeks has been really hard.
Well, that makes kind of perfect sense though, because you've been going through a personal. I would feel that you've probably been going through a personal. Subtle rebirth for the past 6 months, because that's when the new moon in Pisces was. And there's a thing that happens that's simply a process of illumination that's happening whenever it goes into that new moon in your sign. Things are being exposed. You're being seen the world in a greater way, seeing yourself in a clearer way. And so, yeah, I can see why you would feel wrecked by that full moon. It's overexposure or oversaturation or over something. And Pisces is like, they love to, well, the boundaries aren't always there. So deep diving into those fields can be a thing, I feel like, for Pisces natives. So, of course, you felt that way.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's, in terms of eclipses, don't have much to say, but in terms of that last full moon in Pisces, that really did something to me. But like I say, I'm trying to be on the positive side with that. I don't want to get dragged into a lot of self-pity because Pisces are really good at that. So, it's difficult, but yeah, it's also, like I said, an inspiration for me. So I'm just moving on.
Very cool. I like that. Yeah. So you're kind of, you're saying it's an inspiration for you. So it sounds like you might do the same thing that I do, whereas you'll use it as like gasoline for your engine, whether it's positive or negative.
Yeah.
Because you realize it's just energy.
Sadness and anger.
Yeah.
To spur me on to being, to improving myself. Basically.
Totally, because everything is just energy. And either it can circle inside or you can use it to propel. Right. I love that.
Yeah, so I don't want to waste a lot of energy.
Very good.
So I'm trying to put it towards positive.
I like that.
Thanks.
I like that. Well, should we start on with the interviews?
Sure, go right ahead.
Okay, so we are 22 minutes in now.
How long do you like to do these?
What do you think about, I don't know. Look, I don't know.
No, let's just play it by ear. That's fine. I just didn't know if there was a...
Yeah.
Do you have a podcast already?
No.
This is the first one?
I've never done anything like this.
Oh, awesome.
But I do have a nice microphone, and we can set it up on a computer and do even better moving forward.
All right.
How about a little 10-minute interview per speaker?
Okay, fine.
Do you want to set a little timer on your phone just to help us? No.
I can see it.
Okay, fine. Do you want to go first? Because you were kind of already talking about personal things anyway.
Sure. You're going to interview me first.
Yes. Okay. Mackey.
I'm glad I have a name that's not my real name, too.
Right?
So that can be the Mackey and Abacus, or Abacus and Mackey. And I like that a lot.
I like that, too. Oh, shit. Should I have called you Revelator?
No, I like the Mystic and Revelator. Mm-hmm. That's what I actually was calling this podcast, was Mystic and Revelator.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, because, and there's a lot, obviously, behind those words, and I think, for you, I'm no mystic, but I like collaborating with one. Mm-hmm. And Revelator, I can identify with that.
Do you want to tell the people where we got that from?
We got it from the song The Age of Aquarius, and God, who does that? I forgot the group. It was from the musical Hair. But anyways...
The Mamas and the Papas? No. It's in that neighborhood.
Yeah, but it's like, is it 1960s?
Yeah,
might be 70s. Totally. But anyways... Yeah, they were talking about the Age of Aquarius.
And I was freaking out on you about the Age of Aquarius.
Well, and that's a huge topic right now. And with Pluto moving into Aquarius is actually, even though I personally think that we're already in the Age of Aquarius, but there's no real boundary line that anyone can identify. I mean, my teacher, Stephen Forrest, evolutionary astrologer, he had created evolutionary astrology. He's kind of dates it, I think 1803 or 1903, late 1800s, early 1900s, basically when the world changed into electric things, which, Aquarius rules electricity. It's an air sign, and communications, stuff like that. So anyways, the song, Age of Aquarius, has a line, Mystic Crystal Revelations. So that's how we got the mystic and the revelators. We left the crystal out.
We left it out.
But I don't know if you have a crystal ball, but you got tarot cards.
I do.
And so you can divine things.
So the crystal element is the people who are with us listening.
That sounds perfect.
Okay, they're the crystals. Okay, you ready?
Yes.
All right, so let's talk about, I'm going to ask you the what, the how, and the why of astrology. All right, so like, what brought you to astrology? How did you decide to pursue it? And why are you still into this right now, today?
What brought me into astrology is probably, I'll tell you the story. I think, and if I can remember, I was probably 16 years old.
Okay.
And I used to hitchhike a lot. Used to hitchhike back and forth to school. And me and my buddy Clay Thornton.
Like what? Just thumbing for rides or like a train?
Well, this was back in the 70s. So it was a way that it's not regarded as an actual way to get around these days.
Right.
I mean, I've tried it these days. Yeah. It's a lot harder. Back then, it was a lot easier to do. Totally. So I did a lot of it, and I logged a lot of miles. I've hitchhiked cross country. I've hitchhiked up and down the coast. I've done a lot of hitchhiking.
Okay.
But I used to hitchhike back and forth to school when I was in high school. I was probably 16 years old. And me and my buddy Clay Thornton were hitchhiking, and this woman picked us up, Susan, and she was a waitress, and she was wearing her little waitress outfit. Nice. And I remember I was like, shotgun, and she had a really sweet car too. She was maybe 26, 27 years old, and she was really hot. And we jumped in the car, and me and him were like, oh my God. So she gave us a ride, and I of course fell in love with her.
Right.
First sight. I think she was a Gemini, but I can't remember. But anyways, and then of course me and my buddy probably smelled like pot when we got in the car. And she noticed that, and then she was like, hey, you guys should come over to our house and hang out, listen to music and smoke some weed. And then, she ended up kind of being our supplier, and we were like selling at school, selling pot at school. And anyways, this is back in the 70s. Anyway, she was really cool, but she was into astrology, and she would, and I don't know, I may have been a little into it before I even met her, but she kind of spurred me on because there was this really good bookstore in Chapel Hill where I used to live. And they had a great, it was like a New Age bookstore. And they had a really big astrology selection.
Where is Chapel Hill?
In North Carolina.
Is that where you're born and raised?
No, that's where I went to school from probably third grade all the way through the first year of college.
Okay.
And I lived in Carborough and Calvander out in the country.
Okay.
And Chapel Hill for people who know that area. Okay. Great place to grow up. I'm really thankful that I grew up there.
Okay.
And anyways, I got into astrology at an early age, and these ladies, Karen and Susan, they lived together, and we used to go over to their house and hang out, and they were reading our charts. And I was smart enough to know, like my buddy Clay, he lied about his age to her. He wanted her to be older, and so she was reading this thing, and I was like, well, that doesn't work because that's not the right birthday. So I knew I knew that just because your birthday one year and the next year is not going to be the same astrological reading. So anyways, that's how I got into it. But I got into it at an early age, and I used to do charts manually before computers. I mean, I used to do all the math and figure out, I had a table of houses, I had an ephemeris, and I used to do the logarithms and all that stuff, and drew up my own charts. I still got a bunch of old charts that I drew up and did all the math and figured all that stuff out. So there, that part of astrology back then probably held a lot of people back from doing it because it was, you did have to do a lot of calculations to figure out people's charts. Now you just plug your birthday, time, and location into a computer, and bam, you got a chart.
Totally.
which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is really,
But
and that's part of the age of Aquarius, right?
Yes, it is. But you had to work for it. So if you wanted it back in the day, you had to actually.
And I had to buy a bunch of books and do a bunch of math.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I had to go to a logarithm table and figure out planetary positions and stuff, and you know, ascendants and midheavens.
Okay, so how did you pursue it? So you started doing it. Sounds like at home.
Oh yeah.
So you started being self-taught.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So that's all I did. And then really for me, and back to my point with getting picked up hitchhiking by Susan, was I was really into it probably more for the relationship aspect of it.
Totally.
And that's continued throughout my studies or whatever. You know, I got over 100 people in my database. But mostly, you know, a lot of girlfriends, you know?
Yes.
And,
totally.
And I think and for people who don't know, there's a part of astrology called synastry,
Yes.
which is the study of relationship astrology, comparing two charts together.
Yes.
And we were talking about composite charts and all that. And that's, to me, the most interesting thing. And you know, in India they will marry people who've never met each other based on their charts.
Amazing.
So it's really interesting to talk to people. I talked to someone recently about and how their boyfriends were all within like a 2 or 3 weeks birthday. Because her moon, I guess, was in Taurus and their suns were in Taurus or something. So, you know, for people who scoff at astrology or they don't think it's
And a lot
valid, good for them. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, totally.
Go on with your life. I don't give a fuck.
Yes.
But it's real.
Yeah.
And you know, just going back to the beginning of this, where we looked at our two charts and all the crazy relationships there, that there's, you know, the shit's real.
Right. And so much so that you can take two individuals who have never really sat down for a conversation in depth once and have us starting a podcast. Okay, but talk more about the how you pursued it. So the what that got you started was a goal. And then how you pursued it, you started teaching yourself at home, and then you did some other formal education.
Sure. And then I ended up, after I moved here, my family, a lot of the surviving family members that I have live in North Carolina. So I would try to make a point to go down there and visit them every year. And some of my favorite books of astrology, I have a nice little collection of astrology books. The guy named Stephen Forrest, who I've mentioned earlier, the inventor of evolutionary astrology, he's really into the moon's nodes and how they tell you about your past lives and your future, like what you're aiming for in the future based on the moon's nodes. But anyways, which has to do with eclipses. He's one of my favorite astrologers, and it just so happened that he was doing classes in Durham, North Carolina, and that's where my mom lived, and I would go stay with her to visit. So I decided, what the heck? I think he was doing an 8th house class, which I like. I have a huge 8th house, and he was doing a class on it, and so I went ahead and signed up. So so I could spend time at home with my mom, my sister, my aunt, my mom's boyfriend, and I went to this 8th house class, and it blew my mind. It was crazy. There's a bunch of tarot card readers there. There was some psychic people there, and it was just crazy. So it really, it really blew me away about astrology. I mean, I already was really into it, but it got me really heavily into it. And then I continued and did several more of his classes. Okay. And these were intense classes, like 4-day, 8-hour day.
Wow.
The guy is an amazing speaker. He gets up there without any notes.
Wow.
And just goes on and on. He's got stories. He's incredible. And a lot of the people I've met at these classes are really cool too. So anyways, that's kind of my formal education.
Yeah.
I did sign up for, there's an astrology university that was put together by this guy, Tony Howard, who was one of Stephen's students, and worked for Stephen, and was really like super Virgo, very organized guy. And I signed up for that, but then he got a little too political for me, and COVID started, and so I didn't continue.
So that was recent.
Well, that part was recent.
I like that.
But
I didn't even know.
But I'm trying to think of when I went to the first class of Stevens was probably 2016 or something.
Cool.
And then, yeah, Stephen knew
That's
shit
when
was going to hit the fan.
I jumped into college for the first time, but I was up in New York. But continue.
Oh, anyways, that's basically it.
Cool.
And then, and then the last class he did was 2019. I did it 2016 through 2019, and then he decided not to do it in 2020 because he knew that the Pluto-Saturn conjunction was going to fuck up the world.
Yep.
And so he decided he wasn't going to leave California. He used to actually live in Chapel Hill.
Wow.
But I didn't know him back then.
Amazing.
When I was a kid.
Isn't that interesting, though?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, will you talk to us a little bit about why are you participating in this world? Why are you caring about the stars now? Like, why are you still in relationship with this type of world? What does it mean for you? Why?
Because I've been keeping an eye on the stars and the moon. And I mean, we're calling the moon and the sun planets, by the way.
Luminaries. Okay.
So, but I've known pretty much since I was 16 years old what sign the moon is in every day.
Nice.
And I keep track of where the planets are, and I've been watching world events and my personal life the entire time and seeing how they work together. So. And Stephen's favorite saying, as above, so below. So that I can't ignore it. So it's just part of me, So now I think what I'm trying to do is I really enjoy my job working at the bike shop in Davis. But I need to transition at some point to something else. I mean, I think I've done everything I can there. I'm still working on a lot of stuff in the community, but I need something else. So I think the whole thing with the whole Revelator title or whatever is, I think I'm trying to influence people to wake up and get ready for what's happening now. Because I think part of this whole age of Aquarius thing, and it can go both ways. There's good and bad. There's good and bad Capricorn. There's good and bad Aquarius.
Totally.
So I'm talking about Pluto moving from Capricorn to Aquarius. But I think part of the awakening that hopefully is happening is that people are waking up to challenge authority, and that they need to realize that they should be in charge of themselves and not let anyone else be in charge of them. And it's a touchy subject.
It's so touchy.
And it's but it's Aquarius is all about revolution. The last time Pluto was in Aquarius was 1777.
Which was the first kind of really burst for astrology, right? You had all these books start to come out then, and all these workshops start popping up.
Right. So you had the American Revolution, you had the French Revolution, you had all sorts of shit going on. So, and back then it was more of a break away from religious and kings rule, but then it shifted in
1977, not 1777.
1777. And yeah, nobody has their Pluto in Aquarius. Not, I mean, maybe from last year they do, from a little baby.
Yeah.
But nobody else has their Pluto in Aquarius. Okay, so it takes like over 200 years. It takes about 250 years for Pluto to go around. So nobody's got their, Pluto in Aquarius except for little babies from this past year when Pluto's been hanging around the cusp for the last couple of years. But from now till November 19th is the last. It's going to be in Capricorn for a long time.
Yeah.
It's the last gasp. But anyways, I back to what we were talking about. I think people need to realize that their faith, particularly in authority and government, is a myth. That governments don't need to exist, at least not in the way that they are now. And I think it's becoming really obvious when they're stealing money from you and they're buying bombs and they're just using it to kill people.
Oh yes.
When I think we could have a beautiful world that works really well.
Yes.
And that's wealthy, and we don't need to be destroying shit all the time.
Totally.
And we need to withdraw our consent from these horrible authoritarian dictator type people. And I'm not political at all. I hate both political parties equally. I'm an equal opportunity hater. So I'm not falling into that fucking trap. I'm sorry. I'm not gonna be political like that.
Right.
Screw that. Fuck all those people. They're all just actors.
Right.
They're all puppets, and they're all here against us. We all need to unite against them, and that's my focus, is trying to get people to wake up and realize that all that shit is bullshit.
I love it. Holy fuck. Yeah, let's just stay sort of anonymous. If we can.
I want this podcast to go out to the whole world.
Oh, Lord. Okay, thank you for that. Let's see how you did on your time. You went about 20 minutes, which actually is fine. No, that's good. I was wondering if we'd be able to do 10 minutes worth of talking each.
Well, let's go back to what are the three questions?
Let's see, what brought you to astrology?
What?
How did you end up pursuing it, and why are you still into it now?
What brought you to astrology?
Oh, probably my mama. She is also a Scorpio sun, Scorpio rising, and maybe another thing or two.
She's not a midnight baby like you. She's a sunriser. Beautiful. I'm sunset.
Yeah. But I think we just kind of would peek at the section in the newspaper and read about it. But it wasn't really until we sat down at a Chinese restaurant that I really got interested in because, that's one of the things that I love about astrology, and it's kind of like religion, in the fact that it differs, right, all over the world. And Eastern astrology, you can walk into some restaurants, Chinese restaurants, and you'll find, like, at least we did, a menu that had all of the zodiac signs all around it for Eastern astrology. And I already knew that I was a Scorpio, and I took particular interest in it because I loved my mama, and I knew that she was one too. So I was just kind of curious about that link. And then whenever I saw the Eastern astrology, I was like, so I'm not just a Scorpio, I'm a tiger. And I realized that my mama was an ox, and I was like, okay, so...
I'm a pig.
Boar, I like to say.
Oh, I'm bored.
Wild boar. I have a sister who knows that, so I had to think of a way to make her like it. But no, just kind of realizing at a young age, I think I was probably 13 whenever I really started to analyze it. And, having a Mercury in Scorpio, it's what you're going to do anyway with something. Just really deeply dive into it, because I realized that kind of like what you were saying with your friend lying about the year, and so you knew it was off. So your mind was already turning in terms of like noticing code and pattern and what is correct, right? It's either aligned or it's not. And so I read a lot about Scorpio whenever I first realized I was one. My mom actually printed some things off for me to read about it, even though, you know, like in conservative Christian realms, that isn't typically a thing. She allowed us to peer into those stars. Her mother was into that. Her grandmother was into that. Her grandmother had what she called a crystal ball. And her mother also saw visions. So kind of a long line of seers is what I come from. And my mother, she, when she converted to Christianity, it turned into like prophecy for her. But at about 13, I realized that even though I was a Scorpio and my mama was a Scorpio, there were so many differences that I could not explain. The traits, a lot of it just didn't really add up. And so I was like, oh, so what about Eastern astrology? And I started kind of like comparing and contrasting, and being like, oh, okay, so you can be this, but then you have this element and it changes it to that. And so I just got really, really intrigued by, it was almost like recipes. You know, it's like you can both be made of like fucking, maybe you're both bread, but one's like oat flour and the other one is like, I don't know.
Pumpernickel.
Thank you. So I just got really, really curious about the makeup, you know, of what it all means and why and the way that it turns out, and kind of like getting to see that and to be able to predict it. Like you're like, oh, that's pumpernickel bread because you can see it, right? And so I just got really, really, really intrigued. And, you know, being homeschooled, there was kind of like a lot of room for kind of like imagination and thought, which I appreciate now. But like a lot of room to explore in my own mind. Because, you know, there's a lot of boredom. We were growing up, at least, you know, we have a different in generations. But I feel like as an old millennial, I'm in the last generation that knew the world before social media, right? And so we know what night birds sound like, you know, the first ones that come out. We know what the first morning bird sounds like. We know what crickets and whippoorwills sound like. We are okay with being bored. In fact, we might even enjoy it because we're okay with nothingness, right? And so I had a lot of nothingness in my upbringing, and that's gave me a lot of room to dive into other worlds and fantasy and imagination and dream. And then also the what was that as I read about whenever my mom first presented me with all the traits, she's like, and she told all of us, she's like, all right, you're a Gemini, this, that. And we read about it, and it was a cool way for us to bond. But there were a lot of traits that I hated for Scorpio. And I was like, do you gotta be super jealous? Do you gotta be super possessive? Do you gotta hold grudges? Like, what is that? And so I decided to take a look at the crux of all of the negative issues and start kind of reverse engineering them and seeing if I could kind of like work with that. So I was almost approaching astrology as like a type of self-help therapy, kind of in a way, you know, and just kind of like using it to like improve how I moved through the world, how I treated people, how I treated myself. And so that was the what. And I don't know, did you have any experience? Is that completely?
Sure. I think you can use astrology to self-analyze and try to improve because it can expose some of your weaknesses or traits.
Totally.
And make you more aware of them.
Totally. And, you know, I was born with the... my mom always used to say, the world doesn't revolve around you, and truly. But when you're born with a part of fortune in the first house, analyzing the self is going to come to you naturally, and it'll be in the forefront of those pictures. But yeah, learning about others through analyzing the self, learning about the world through analyzing my own perspective, and then getting into other people's perspectives, moving slowly, and in order to figure out how to relate, because I also wanted to relate, and that was a big part of astrology's draw for me as well. You know, being homeschooled, being neurodivergent, It was really a great tool for connection and getting to know people. Because without that, I was probably just going to be a creeper always, just like people watching, you know? So yeah, that was probably the what, and then the how that I approached it is mostly with self-taught. My first real kind of sit down and study came from a book by Suzanne White. Do you know her?
No.
She was like a 70s writer, and it was a cross between Western and Eastern astrology. So like after I got a hold of that menu, I was like, what's going on? There are hybrids. There are so many different facets or faucets of this diamond. Let's start looking and grafting these trees. Let's start looking at the combinations. And so I went to the library, and oh man, that whole section of the library, you know, whenever you find that section in the library where it's like all the good witchy shit, it's like spirituality probably is what it's underneath.
A cult.
Yeah, but it probably says spirituality because they don't want to encourage that word. But it's when you find that section that you kind of find home. At least that's how it felt for me. And that was it. You know, it would be book after book, and I would just teach myself, and I would learn at my own pace because, you know, I'm dyslexic, or at least dyslexia is something that I deal with. And, you know, I have like an audio delay processing thing. So moving slowly and deeply was really, really nice for me. And so being self-guided and self-taught was a great way for me to start and a great way for me to stay with it. And it was just something that I couldn't let go. Like if I cared about someone, if I loved them, if they were a family member or a friend who I wanted to know, if I cared for you, then I would probably look into your astrology. If I had downtime between shifts at work, I would probably look into astrology. And so I realized that this was not only a love language for me, but also it's what my free time went to. And so if it's like the only thing that you can think about really, or your go-to, you might as well figure out a way to see if you can put bread on the table with it. Like go on ahead and invest in it and see if it can take care of you too. Like care for it. Maybe it wants to care for you too. And so the how that I pursued it, it actually didn't come into the works until not that long ago. 2020. Shit hit the fan in New York. I was living in New York. I had been in college up there taking a lot of classes in psychology and doing a lot of art. And then everything went to hell with COVID. And I came home. My sister came up and got me, bless her heart, and moved back home to West Virginia and started bartending, got a cushy job, lived in a really cushy apartment with a fireplace, and was doing well for myself. I hit the ground running, and I had a good community here, you know, and was supported and just started to do okay, grafting back into the area and even thriving. Like I felt good. And then decided to do a little check-in, got some LSD, built a big fire in my cushy apartment, and was like, okay, I've got it going on, but what do I have going on? Because I was aware that we go through so many changes, and I hadn't really been checking in with those changes. I'd kind of been dealing with a lot of health issues and healing, trying to heal that, and so I hadn't really been conscious of my stars in a long time, or anybody's, just kind of been checked out. And so I was like, what am I working with here? And so I went on a little journey for myself, and one of the things that came up was that I had to devote as much time possible to the stars, as much time possible to studying them and to learning them, and as little time possible to everything else. which was a scary revelation because why are you working at a bike shop? It doesn't always put food on the table, right? It's like, it's like we work because work is supposed to be hard and laborious because of capitalism. It's supposed to be something that we don't like. And so whenever I got that message or that download or whatever, I was like, well, I guess I'm going to stop investing my energy into these spaces and spaces that aren't aligned with this road. And that means a little bit of struggle. And so I quit my cushy job. I moved out of my cushy apartment and I moved into a van down by the river and I started studying the stars even harder and got a teacher. I was like, I got to ante up. And so I sought out Barbara Carter, who is the oldest astrologer in the land. I kept hearing her name over and over. And seeing all these really old astrology charts, like what you did, where the math had to be calculated. And I kept seeing all these older generation locals who had charts by her. And I was like, what is going on? Who is this person? Well, she's a native woman. She's an elder. And yeah, she's been doing charts since before there was anything online. And so I got her number. I asked for a 30-minute meeting. It turned into a 3-hour meeting. And she said, is this what you want to do with the rest of your life? And I said, I'm pretty sure I don't have a choice. She said, then you'll be my apprentice. Mm-hmm. And that was 3 years ago.
Wow.
We've been working together ever since. And since really training with her, I decided to start allowing myself to be seen. And I probably started my business maybe a year after. So I started Oracleistic Mystic after a year with her. Even though that's not a lot of time, I knew that I had been quietly and silently investing in it for a long time, and now I had the gumption, just having the idea of a Yoda and having so much guidance made me feel like I was allowed to go ahead and claim this life and this route for myself. And yeah, that's the way that I approached it. And the why? Was that what we're doing? The why of it?
What was it?
The what?
How?
What got me in? The
What, how, and why?
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay.
The why I'm still into it, or the why I'm into it. Much like yourself, I see it as a really important thing for consciousness sake, for the world. Whenever I was studying with my teacher, Barbara Carter, she kept peeking into the ephemeris that's looking forward, and she kept saying that she was watching Pluto and wanted to know what was happening, and she was watching the birthday chart of the United States, Turtle Island, and she was seeing all these things come up, and I was just kind of quietly listening. And then I started to peek into it as well in my own time and just got really, really into it and obsessed and noticed the patterns that there, for example, there's like with the planets that started to align in the fall of last year that started coming into alignment hadn't been in that pattern for like 70 years. And it was a pattern that kind of occurred over and over and over again, starting at the birthplace of this country, which was a revolution. And so like each time these planets would come back around, there would be like a 7-year war. And then knowing that was coming up all last summer, I started talking to my friends about preparing for a really big war, embracing themselves, and they're like, what do you mean? There's war everywhere. And I was like, there's a different kind of war coming, like, and it's gonna last for a long time, and it's gonna involve us deeply. And it's like, it doesn't really feel great to predict things because it feels scary, because you don't want to go down on record saying the wrong thing. But when you're literally just doing the math, it's not that big of a deal. It doesn't feel like that big of a chance or a risk. And so being able to talk with my friends about assessing their values and getting themselves in alignment so they could be prepared for these changes felt really, really great. And so for me, why I'm in it, it's a type of care. It's a way to offer care for the people around me. It feels like an act of compassion because it helps people not only prepare for the energies that are kind of moving around in the cosmos, but also it equips them with the strengths and the archetypes that they were born under. Because I believe that you're born you chose when, where, and whom you were born to. And so then you would be the author of your own star map. And so giving them that map back to themselves is a great act of compassion and love for mankind. And so that's why I do it. In addition to also, for also just like my own sanity, as like a third or fourth generation seer, I feel the planet energies strongly. And I've always felt these shifts at least a week in advance. So by like looking at the astrology a month ahead or a year ahead, I can literally work to kind of navigate all of those really intense energies. So compassion for the world, compassion for myself, and then also the last reason of the why is that I'd really, and this is why I ask you to do this podcast with me, is because I'd really love to dispel the stigma of evil around this work. You know, it's like it was a little bit ballsy of my mom to talk about astrology, considering that, you know, she was a co-pastor at the time. And I don't like that it's ballsy. You know, I don't like that. So we're in a shop right now that's hosting us, and I do astrology here. And the people who come in and want it and are hungry, it's great to see them. Having said that, there are a lot of people who walk by saying that's devil work, you know? And so kind of dispelling the bad myths around this really beautiful world is another reason why I'm into it. And whenever the last time I approached you about doing this podcast together, I was like, Mackey, the Pope is texting about astrology. He's tweeting about astrology, literally using the word astrology when naming things that are blasphemous and bad for humanity. When the Pope starts tweeting about the badness of a world that I love so much, that's when I'm like, okay, we need a microphone.
That's awesome.
That's my why. What did I do? I don't know. How long was I? I can't even tell. You stopped at 44 minutes, and now we're 60 minutes in. So we both did about 20 minutes apiece.
Perfect.
Okay, cool.
Good.
Great. So a little more long-winded than what we thought.
Yeah.
That's nice.
So are we going to get together again to talk about Pluto moving into Aquarius, since that was actually what I thought we were going to be talking about today?
Yes.
And we've already gone for an hour?
I think this is a good intro, though.
Okay.
I really do. It's great because it feels like it's all happening in real time. They're getting to know us as we're getting to know us.
No, I think the important thing was to talk about us and our astrological relationship right up front, and then move into other things. But yeah, we've been very personal this whole time, and maybe we can work into social and world stuff later.
Totally, for sure. Okay, yeah, so then our next visit with y'all and each other and ourselves is going to be talking about this big shift that's happening for Pluto and for all of us collectively. And so stay tuned. It will be coming out within this Scorpio season. I think that I think it's important
that we need to do it before Pluto actually moves into Aquarius.
Well, I'll be out of the country for the next week, but early November looks good for me. We're even going to talk about our scheduling on here. Early November.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's figure out a date later.
Yeah, totally.
So where do people get to hear this?
Where do you get to hear this? Well, I don't know. You know, we're talking about launching this onto a pirate radio or getting onto a local radio station. But that's TBD.
I think it should get on the internet.
Ooh, can you help with that?
I mean,
are you savvy?
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, it's supposed to be a podcast,
okay.
right?
Yeah, I know, but it's like, yeah.
Okay, well, let's do one first and then plan on it later.
Okay. All right, cool. All right, well, this has been great.
Yeah.
And I look forward to the next one.
Good.
That's going to be happening quite soon.
I want to be able to actually hear this.
I'm going to send it to you then.
Okay.
Revelator.
All right.
Okay, well, all for now.
Yeah, that sounds good. Let's wrap it up.
Very cool. Thank you, all you little crystals and diamonds out there and star seeds, for joining us. And good Lord, it's about time.
Yeah, thanks for spurring me on. It's been, I needed to do something different, and I needed to, man up.
Ooh, we had to bring gender into it? All right, whatever. All right, thank you. I appreciate you. All right, bye. You want to say goodbye?
Bye.